My name's James Keast, the costume designer on Belgravia. When I was asked to do this series, you kind of stand back and you think, how am I going to do this? Where am I going to come from? You work out the budget, you work out what you can get, where you can get it, and the colours. So I have lots of conversations with the set designer to say, what colours are you using? They normally start before I do, so they have an inkling of locations that might be a National Trust house and they can't change the colour, and so on and so on. So I start with the colour, so I then run around London or wherever I can get fabrics.
My name is Donald Woods. I'm the production designer on Belgravia. We had a meeting about Belgravia, and first he said was, where should we create Belgrave Square? Because I think we realised that Belgrave Square in London is firstly a major thoroughfare through London, and also it's got 15 embassies, and so realistically and practically it wasn't going to be in Belgrave Square.
I'm Pamela Haddock. I'm the makeup and hair designer on Belgravia. I read the script and I might read it a couple of times and I'll make my notes and pull out the things that I think are most important. And then I start going through my reference. And I really enjoy that. That's part of the job I really enjoy. And I pull together all my reference pictures of each person, how I imagine that they should look. And then there's usually a meeting and a discussion with the producer, director, and actually, what the director is thinking.
What I concentrate on, because I also, in this process, talk to the DOP, Director of Photography, about how they're going to light things. And a lot of the lighting is from candlelight. So you know that you have to choose fabrics that will pick up the light. If you look along the line, you'll see that a lot of the fabrics are interesting in that they've got some kind of luster, some kind of interest for camera, so that depending on how it's going to be lit, the DOP will have something to use. This is this character Susan, who is one of my favourites. Susan in the script is always having costume fittings, so I tried to kind of slightly overdress her so she stood out a little bit to make it look like she's always having new costumes. So again, I've done that. I've kind of made her stronger, the colours stronger, and the fabric's a bit stronger.
Under me, or with me, I never talked about under, it's all a collaboration, and without everybody else, it wouldn't happen. Linda Wilson's set decorator, and she has a team of her own. She deals mainly with the props and carriages and horses and those type of things. And then Mark Kevian has been supervising art director, and he has dealt with the construction side, because we've built sets at Twickenham Studio. We've also built, for every location, we've had builds and covering, and the great doors you see behind me are built into the assembly rooms here. We then have carpenters and painters and plasterers and scenic artists and prop makers. So yeah, it's a big old family just to get to where we are now.
My first thing actually that I do before I read the script is choose my team. It's quite an unusual project because we're set in 1841, the whole thing, but we have flashbacks to 1815, and that involves a certain amount of ageing.
So this is like a wedding fabric from a company that sells fabrics for wedding dresses, and it's been dyed this sort of duck egg blue, which has been quite successful. It's kind of chosen specifically for a scene where the actress who wears it, Dame Harriet, has to look kind of vulnerable and realise what she has started, kind of thing. Won't tell you too much, but so the colour works really well for that, works really well on the set.
Research, yes, huge. Probably all of us spent hours during the day researching the minutiae of a teaspoon or whatever from the period. You always need to refresh yourself. You don't assume you know everything. There's always something new to know, or some military item, or we had the cannons from the Battle of Waterloo in an exterior scene to this. So everything's research really, and we've got historical advisors to help out, and books, and being in London, there's all the museums to call on. So yes, it's a full-time job research.
I don't think people realise that, when they watch period dramas, that so much research has gone into these things. It doesn't just happen, and things have to be made. We have wigs made, we have sideburns made to fit, match colour, have the lace that has to You know, it's high definition now, so the lace, it kind of has to disappear and make it look like there isn't a wig being worn. But I quite enjoy all that challenge, really.
This is my favourite of all the costumes. This is an evening dress for Harriet. You can see when I move it that the fabric changes, it gives it a bit of interest without it becoming distracting. And also, my favourite thing is I've used a lot of lace, so if you kind of see along the tops. So this is Carrick Macross lace from Ireland, which is fantastic, lovely piece. It's very difficult to get lace and it's becoming very expensive, but it's kind of when you're doing a lot of television and you end up doing Head and Shoulders, this becomes very important. Whereas the men's clothes, it's kind of the opposite. Unfortunately, their fabrics are not as interesting, so I've pushed the interest in waistcoats to try and get some interest in the waistcoats, and the more you push the fabric in the waistcoat, the more flamboyant the actor or the character might be, or the more subtle. Some of these are from fabrics that are from a company that kind of closed down, and they were all fabrics that were made into men's neckties. So the fabric is only 27 inches wide, and so you might actually walk along the West End and see, you think, oh, that's my granddad's tie or something like that. But it's really a way of getting a really interesting silk with an interesting texture. The thing that I like also, that I try and push in everything, I'm trying to find it, is I like to get a little bit of tartan in here every now and again, and a bit of paisley. And there are a couple of tartan waistcoats there, that's one. For obvious reasons. So
at the beginning of the Belgravia, when all the heads of department meet, we had a sort of meeting on how it should all look, give it a difference from any other period drama. And I think we all settled on a look that firstly got to be 1840 and 1815. So there's two periods to this, and I think the other side of it is to complement the colours, complement the textures, and to give each place a life of its own, whilst adhering to the story. So we found the architecture in Newtown, Edinburgh, wonderful Murray Place, fantastic architecture. Unfortunately, it was all grey and stone, whereas Belgrave Square was white. When it was first built, it was painted in the early part of the 1800s. So we then approached a VFX company, Blue Bolt, to see if they could turn those lovely stone buildings in Edinburgh into white buildings of Belgravia. It was finding those interiors that matched the grandness of the exteriors. But equally, they had to feel like they were almost new. So the two houses we used as the interiors, Manderston House and Basildon House, they had been beautifully preserved, and you felt like it was a newish interior to what is effectively a 200-year-old building. But yes, you have a conversation with James about something softer, or it might be a bedroom. Usually bedrooms are quite define who people are in terms of their personal taste. The house is usually something to show off, or to have a dining room or a drawing room or whatever. So a lot of the bedrooms we've tried to reflect some of the characters and even the moods. I mean, one of the ones in 1815 we made quite sombre because sad things happen, and after the Battle of Waterloo. So sometimes the colours reflect what's going on in the story, and if we can influence something, we built a set so we could influence it. We do.
So sometimes we use people's own hairline. You know, I've done that a lot. We couldn't do that on this because the period is middle parting and sweepy down sides, which not many people have. So we did have to use full wigs, but a lot of the time, if it's earlier Victorian or later Victorian, we can curl the front of their own hair and put a wig on the back. We do that quite a lot. As the cast come in, I may change things a little bit when I know exactly what they look like. A lot of the women on this have had modern hair, so most of them had to be wigged. So in a way, though, it means I can use my reference. That's what they're going to look like, and if everyone's happy. No makeup was the makeup fashion. So for us, it's taking someone that looks very modern, their eyebrows might be too plucked, or just making them look much more natural. We can only go by the paintings, and most of the women in the paintings don't really, they look very, very natural. We'll take my ideas and run with them, and every day they have to do the really, laborious task of, at night, taking the wigs off and resetting them. They have to be wet, rollered, and put in what we call a wig oven, and dried overnight. And then in the morning you take the rollers out and there's these beautiful curls, and then they're ready to go back on the artist. It ticks all those boxes for anyone that likes a sort of ringlet drama, as I call it. Great stories, they're intriguing, and the actors that have been cast have brought it all to life, and they look great. You've done their hair, you've done your best, costume have done everything, they're lit. You then rely on them, they've got to pull it off the page, and they certainly have on this.